Hi everybody, and welcome to From This Corner TV. I'm your host Marilyn Dayton, and we've got another great show for you today. And remember, we're not just here to entertain you, but we're also here to educate you and talk about very interesting things. And let me look at my little notes here today, because today we're going to talk about being a maverick. Well, that's one of the things we're going to talk about with Kay Wilson, who's an attorney, executive coach, and motivational speaker. What does this have to do with you? You're asking yourself. Well, we all kind of have a maverick somewhere inside us, I like to think. So let's find out exactly what that means and who Kay is and what she does. So let me tell you a little bit about her. She is, of course, an executive coach and employment lawyer with experience in human resources and employee relations. She has several programs, such as Charm School for Mavericks, okay? Working with powerful personalities to help them learn how to moderate their wattage. I love that. And the Motivation and Self-Mastery program, where she serves pre-release inmates and their families. So as you can see, this is a woman of many talents, and she wears many, many hats. And Kay, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Marilyn. It's a pleasure to be here.
I have been looking so forward to this. And of course, we have our co-host, Dodie Milardo, back with us. Yay, Dodie.
Thank you for having me back.
So you're going to be joining a chat with three ladies here. But we're going to be talking about men as well as women. So don't worry about it. If you're a guy watching, it's okay. Stay with us, okay? So let's agree for a moment that we each have found ourselves in a position where we need tools to meet life head on, right? Exactly. Things happen to us and we need tools to take care of those things. So some of us have more tools to help us than others. Now, Kay, can you tell us a little bit about how you went from being an attorney, and we'll back up to you being an attorney too, but you went from being an attorney, you expanded on that to where you are adding your talents to helping people find those tools to meet life head on and grab life and make it work for them. How did that happen? I mean, from an attorney to...
Thank you. It's a good question. And when I look back, there were various points and junctures where I would make a choice and take a path, and it would lead me a little further. And then, eventually things led to where I am. I've always been interested in personal evolution and was a voracious reader as a child. I read books like Norman Vincent Peale's book, The Power of Positive Thinking, and I read How to Win Friends and Influence People. And this is like late grade school.
Yeah.
So, I was very, very interested in what it takes to be a person who has authority and position and knows how to use their power with fairness in this world. I wanted to get things done. So I became a lawyer, and about 10 years into my practice, I got very interested in the area of coaching and learning about coaching. So I took coaching classes in New York City, and when I got done with those coaching classes, I thought to myself, okay, here I am thinking, Tony Robbins has a program, what's my program? And I thought, why don't I come up with a program? And so I sketched out a series of ideas, and then I thought, well, what can I do with these ideas? And that's when I decided to try to use the program to work with inmates in the state of Connecticut. And I kind of talked my way into prison. And I had a very, very
Not
nice...
a lot of people want to do that.
I love the way you put that.
I talked my way in. I'll never forget it. It was Deputy Warden Smeda, Kelly Smeda, who gave me an interview and gave me an opportunity to start working with the men at Bergen Correctional in Mansfield. And that's when I started my coaching and motivational speaking career. And that was back in June of 2003. So I've been doing this for 13 years. And along the way, I took executive coaching classes as well. And so I have a nice hybrid practice between being a lawyer an employment lawyer and a litigator, but I also have my coaching of executive clients, and I have the opportunity to serve the men and women who are incarcerated and want to desperately change their lives for the better. So, and it's very, I wouldn't say it's challenging, because it's so rewarding that I sometimes wonder when I'm done teaching some of these classes who got more out of it. They are so thirsty for a message of hope, and the work continues.
I think that's amazing. I have to give you many, many kudos for taking your knowledge, your wealth of knowledge and experience, and turning it into something that will help people who really, really need help that we forget about usually.
Right. Well, in this country, we incarcerate more people per capita than any other industrialized nation. And we have a real problem in our criminal justice system of over-incarceration. And that's one issue that I haven't really done a lot of work on that issue yet. It is of great concern to me, however. And then the other thing is that there's not a cohesive way or a cohesive set of supports out there for people that are in reentry. If they have family, that's great, but if they don't have family, they don't have a job to go to, or they're homeless, it becomes even more precarious for ex-inmates to acclimate into culture. So I'm hoping that my program gets them at least thinking about the things they need to think about in order to have the self-mastery and the motivation to go out and become successful at their reentry to their lives.
I think that's wonderful, and let's keep with us for a little bit, because you've got the York Summit too that we want to talk about. Why don't we just keep going with this subject, because there's so much to it.
What is it when you go in to talk to inmates? What is it that you how do you guide them? What do you tell them specific? Can you be more specific?
Sure.
About how you guide them from being in prison to being out of prison?
Sure.
And how to navigate that?
Well, the program that I created is called Motivation and Self-Mastery.
Okay.
And the first thing that I tell them is that I, like they, have made mistakes in my life.
Amen.
And
we all have.
But for the grace of God, could I be possibly imprisoned? Mm-hmm. I've never looked at them as them. I think of the class as we. And I invite them to consider. I don't tell them, I'm not going to teach you something and you're going to learn it. My attitude is, I'm going to invite you to consider a series of ideas that may serve you. And I'm here to serve you and help you get your power back so that you can become the person that you are meant to be and express your gifts to the world. And then I tell them that, I don't want to know why they're there. All I need to know is that they have the thirst for the class materials, and I give as much as I can. It's like, I go in there and my attitude is, I'm going to give them 100% of a power boost, a feeling that they are worthy in spite of any mistakes they made, that their worthiness is a choice that's available for them to accept right here and right now, and that the things that we do not define us. We are not defined by the mistakes that we make. In fact, we're bigger than any one thing that we do, and that if we have the focus and direction and consistent action over time, we may then learn how to express ourselves and our purpose and give our gifts to the world and give back.
That's fabulous.
It's a series. There's a lot more to it than that, but they love it, and I in turn start to love them, and really look at their journeys. They tell me about their lives, Some, by the time you get to prison as a woman, you've not had an easy time of it, or man, and they tell me about the things that they've experienced or the things they've had to do to try to survive on the streets. It's downright horrifying. But the upside, the good news, is that a lot of them realize that if they hadn't been incarcerated, they may not be alive today. And some of them realize that, but for incarceration, their life wouldn't have made a change. We have a tremendous amount of drug addiction in this country and in our communities. And the drug and alcohol addiction is so pervasive among the inmate population. People that are going into prison have drug and alcohol problems. Not every single one of them, but a very large percentage. And the reason they get in trouble is because that habit gets out of control. Those addictions take over. And the disease model hasn't worked very well, but what we have to understand, though, is that we have to really inspire people to invoke their will to evolve. Everyone can evolve. We can all reinvent ourselves at any moment. We can be and do a different way. But we have to work on our will to evolve. It's not enough to say you want it. You've got to actually work on putting in systems and strategies to have your mental self-mastery so that you can then have your physical self-mastery. And the self-mastery comes from discipline, which is consistent action over time. Mm-hmm. Now, you know, some of us grow up learning this stuff, but some of us don't ever get the memo on how does the law of attraction work. I talk to them about that. I talk to them about positive psychology theories. I talk to them about how they can change probabilities to their favor. We don't have ultimate control in our life. Yes, there's a little play in the system, but we can always affect our possibilities in the right direction by consistent action over time and self-mastery. So it covers a really broad area of ideas, but I know that I can see them. They're riveted. I mean, they really are riveted to hear this information. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about it and they talk about their lives and where there were choice points where they made errors, they can see the blocked thinking. And one of the things I say is, you were imprisoned mentally long before you actually manifested prison. And it was that thinking or those errors of thought. And you gave your power away to errors of thinking, to the wrong people in the wrong places and the wrong situations. You reached for the wrong thing to comfort yourself, whether it's an addictive substance. And you can get your power back now by working on your will to evolve.
This sounds like anybody that wants to affect change could hear exactly what you just said and benefit by it. It doesn't have to be somebody in prison.
Right. Well, what I'm doing now
is it migrating?
I'm taking the program out.
Yeah.
And I'm actually testing it in a local nonprofit, which is dedicated to helping urban youth become economically successful adults. And they follow them from 14 to 24. And I'm bringing the program in. They've allowed me to bring it in, and we're just going to see how it can work for young people.
Wow.
And my goal is to teach the young people to be the teachers of the class, because then the peer-to-peer happens, and that's where the magic is.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah. That's where you really can make some difference, because all of the principles that I teach, they're non-denominational. They're not religious. A lot of the ideas come from the wisdom traditions, but they're very accessible to everyone. Mm-hmm. And they're principles that I found that worked for me, coming up from my circumstances. And I would love to have a full-time contingent of volunteers delivering these programs. That would be really good. But all of this falls under the Maverick Leadership Institute, which I founded. And motivation and self-mastery is one of the programs. There are some other programs that I have as well. And the Maverick Leadership Institute is really dedicated to the positive evolution of power. How people use their power, how they get their power, what they do with it, fair uses of power, and eliminating abuse. And whether that's in an interpersonal relationship and bullying, or whether it's in the workplace environment where you're getting nitpicked to death by an upline manager or even a peer, I want to make there to be a very open and strong vocabulary for talking about how power is being used and how people are being affected by that power.
Domestic violence and sexual abuse victims, I think, could benefit from this as well. Are you reaching out to that group somehow?
Well, I have only so much time, and
Oh, really? That's another question I want to ask you.
Between my law practice and my advocacy and my freedom of information work that I do, and the executive coaching, it is of interest to me, and I will speak to those groups at any time. As gratis, just to help any group that needs that. But my speaking is starting to take off now, and I'm getting more national speaking
Fabulous.
opportunities, and I love to speak. I love to be out there communing with people. I love the exchange of ideas. I love your show for that reason. I think it's a great thing that you're doing here.
Yeah, well,
you.
I'm so enthralled with this, you know. If we can come back to this particular course, but you also have a let me see, what's the name of
Charm
it?
School.
Charm School for Mavericks.
Mavericks.
Yeah.
And I think
love the
that's
name.
fascinating.
Yeah.
And I want to
Yeah.
know how what you do to tell them to moderate their wattage. I love that expression.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Talk to us about that.
So the Charm School for Mavericks is an executive coaching process that and it's really a niche. It's only for people in leadership positions who have stronger than average personalities. And what I help them do is to moderate their wattage.
Yeah.
And it's like a dimmer switch. You don't always want the light on full blast. Sometimes you want to take it down just a little bit. And what I teach them is graciousness, how to gauge and understand a social situation so that they can pick up on social signals that they're getting that may tell them or give them intel that they're off track, and that they can also affirmatively send positive social signals. We get into what I call positive direct communication, where how do you give feedback to someone? You don't do the feedback sandwich because people never hear the good stuff in the middle. You have to use positive direct communication instead. And it's more honest, it's a more forthright way of dealing with the situations. And when I'm working with an executive, I kind of become their consigliere. They call me at all times of day and night, and what they typically call me is when they're faced with an interpersonal dilemma. And it has to do with, how do I navigate the politics of this situation? And then, the question is there an upline component? Is there a peer-to-peer component? We analyze the dynamics of the power of what's happening in the situation, and then I give them strategies for maintaining their power, but also making sure that's safe and fair for others on their teams. And that's what we need to do as the Maverick leadership is about becoming the new leader, the leader that is inclusive and doesn't just appropriate the word, the leader that is transparent in the sense that they share with people, I'm about to make a decision. Here are the factors I'm considering, but I want to hear from you too. Well, wouldn't you love that from a boss?
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't you love someone who
Getting
says,
input.
I want the team to get together because we're going to do a mini brainstorm session, but we're also going to take some time after that session to continue thinking on our own. Now you've got the extroverts happy because they get to dominate the discussion in the open forum because the extroverts all talk. And now you've got the introverts because they need time to go away and think, and they do their best thinking on their own. So I teach them all these different things about personality types, and the foremost mission of it is for them to shed the perception that they're unapproachable. And that's the word that comes up. You're unapproachable, they'll be told, or you intimidate people, or people are afraid to speak up in front of you, or people are complaining about how you make decisions and favoritism. I mean, they come up. People are people, and it
people
comes
are real,
up.
yeah,
It comes up in nonprofits. It comes up in boards of education. It comes up in companies, big and small. Even family companies have these dynamics. So the work that I do with these executives is to really get them very conscious, very mindful about how they're using their power. And to not only do that, but the ultimate goal of every Maverick is not only to unleash ourselves so that we can be who we are meant to be and let our light shine, but to do that for others, to help them come forward. Because there's really two ways we can use our power in this world. We can enhance others and reflect back to them their goodness, their ability, their capability, their talents, and help them rise, or we can diminish them. And that's where the bullying comes in, or the classism, or the racism, or pulling rank, or pulling social rank. And these are all things that it's a state of human affairs, they come up. And if I can just move the ball forward toward fair uses of power, that's my life's work right now.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. I was just thinking of a scenario. So here's the Maverick, the real tough personality, talking to their employee, and they're about ready to bowl them over.
Right.
What would you suggest that they stop and do right then if they can catch themselves before they do it.
Pause.
Okay?
Assess their body language immediately, because the chances are they may have indicia of aggression or upset or frustration, all of which scare other people.
Sure, sure. So
And when
the
you
physical
put,
aspects.
and when you put another person in a fear state, they become less competent, less creative, less able to solve problems. So it's completely counter-effective.
Right.
It's exactly what you do not want to do, is put others in a fear state. So you pause, check your physicality, monitor and adjust your physicality, maybe even physically take a step back if you've approached. And then from there, consciously decide, how is the conversation going to unfold? And I have different strategies for how different conversations can unfold, a little bit of a primer, if you will, on how to have difficult conversations.
Yep.
And so it's really about intentionality, though, and making sure that you are managing yourself. Goes back to self-mastery.
Yeah.
And then, you can change a habit in 21 days, but it's got to be consistent action over time that really wins the race.
Yeah.
And so people working with a Maverick who is unmoderated or an unmitigated Maverick, their fear is that the person's never going to change and that they're going to be tormented by this person. And the people that work with that Maverick need to not only support that Maverick in their trying to make change, but they need to come up a little themselves. And sometimes the work isn't just working with the Maverick. Sometimes it's working with the people around the Maverick so that they can learn how to hold their space and maintain themselves. Because Mavericks, where there's a void, they fill it.
And some of those subordinates are intimidated easily, or
Exactly.
they don't have the confidence, right,
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
face that person.
Yeah.
So the Maverick has to learn to be not on autopilot.
That's right.
Yeah.
Consciousness is the key.
Awareness, yeah.
Conscious, present moment awareness of how they're coming across.
Fascinating.
And
It's very interesting work.
It is. It's got to be, because
Yeah.
as you're talking, I'm thinking back to not necessarily bosses, but when you're an entrepreneur, you work for your clients, so they're your boss. Okay. I'm thinking back on some of the ones that I've worked with that I then said, I suggest you work with someone else. Here's a few names. I noticed that you can't help but get defensive, and your brain shuts down. You stop listening. Whatever they're talking about, you're no longer interested, because you know what? They're knocking you over, and you can't breathe because all the air is going this way, past you, and they're just. So the work that you can do to help people, oh my goodness, I could have kept a few clients after all, but hey, that's, neither here nor there.
Yeah, well, what's really funny is that, I have some legal clients who I slip into coaching. The coaching skills never leave you. And sometimes with my coaching clients, my law hat comes on, because I'm seeing where there's risk analysis and where whatever's happening may open opportunity for a risk in the company. So I've got these dual hats that I wear, and it's fun to see how they play out. But most Mavericks, you start with the premise with a Maverick is that, just like anybody else, they want respect, they want to be included, and they want to be acknowledged. Those are the three big drivers for human satisfaction: respect, acknowledgement, inclusion. So I start with the Maverick by forming a bond with them, because if we're going to do the deeper work, they have to trust me. And there's an excellent TED Talk by Brene Brown about the power of vulnerability. Now, I know about this Maverick work because I used to be an unmitigated Maverick. When I first became an attorney, I was stomping around in my heels with my briefcase and taking no prisoners. And over time, I started to study different wisdom traditions, and I realized that, while I had been, as a child, severely bullied, I had then swung all the way over to being a little bit of a bully. And I didn't like what I saw when I really looked at myself. But all work here on Earth School is about looking at self and measuring ourselves against our greater yardstick, which is our character and our values. And so that self-honesty enabled me to say, wait a minute, I need to pull back. Now, I didn't have this program to help me. I just had to do it on my own. And I learned that there is I've never had anybody say to me in recent decades, you're not powerful. You're not a powerful person. I've also not had people say to me that you're intimidating. The intimidation factor has dropped away. Now, there's still maybe some people who, because of their confidence level or their stuff, if you will, maybe get intimidated. But I'm not operating on, all 8 cylinders in the sense of charging ahead with my pedal pressed to the metal. I've taken the switch and dimmed the light just a little bit so that there's space and room for other people to show up. So learning that for myself, I let them know I was in your shoes. And what didn't work for me probably won't work for you or isn't working. So let's begin.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I love it. Do you sleep? I mean, listen to this woman, okay? This is a woman that just does so much. It's, wow, I'm fascinated. When I heard you speak at Marge's event, we were both speakers, you just fascinated me, and the more I learned about you, the more I knew I had to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Because there's just, and I love the way you express yourself.
Thank you.
You express yourself, and I'm sure you agree with me, you express yourself in a way that we all wish we could say things, that you touch us with what you say.
Oh,
each and every
Marilyn.
one of us.
Thank you.
that are watching today and that are sitting here. You touch us because you know what? We as human beings are imperfect. Yes, I admit it. But we always have hope, and we're changing and evolving all the time. And the fact that you do give people tools to we're sitting here thinking about, okay, I could have used her, a few years back before I mellowed.
Right.
And,
Today.
Today, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you balance everything that you do?
Well, I love that I have a balance because when I was just being an attorney, only taking cases and not doing the prison work and not doing any of the executive coaching or the speaking, I was very unhappy. I found it draining to just be an attorney day in and day out, month after month, year after year. And so now I don't get tired of any of the things I'm doing because I have a nice balance. And I do probably work a little more than most people do in terms of hours. But because I love what I'm doing now, I don't find it to be onerous, and then also, to be fair, I'm child free, and unencumbered, so I do, I have some time, and I remember, being told as a child that if you have gifts, it's really a sin not to use them, and as you figure out what those gifts are, you get clearer and clearer on what it will look like for you to give back in this world. So over time, it's just been an ongoing evolution. But I'm, every day I do a little bit of work on each one of the sectors of my life. I have like a pie chart on the wall. Sector A, executive coaching. All right, what are we doing with that? And I kind of have, it's funny because my day will be punctuated by doing some legal work, and then I'll get maybe a call from one of my executive coaching clients and try to give them, the laser coaching that they need to then make whatever decisions are in front of them with their best efforts. So it's pretty balanced, but I need a little vacay. I got to be honest with you.
I would think. Wow.
Ladies, I'm needing some vacay.
Well, speaking of vacay, it's almost time to take a break. And I know, Dodie, you had something that you wanted to share with us.
Yes, I do. Kind of a serious note. I've been doing a lot more driving the last week or so than I usually do, and I've observed a lot of craziness, antics, if you will. People on cell phones, and that's not even unusual. I saw a woman this morning putting mascara on while she was driving 70 miles an hour on I-95. I saw somebody switch lanes from my left lane, I was in the right lane. They cut right across in front of me and barely got off the exit. And we were all going 65 miles an hour. I saw a guy in a motorcycle with no helmet going 70. I mean, crazy stuff. So I guess this is just a reminder, if you will. Where are y'all going? Why are you going so fast? Slow down and take it easy. We're all in this together. Don't hurt other people. Don't hurt us. Don't hurt yourself. Just be a little smarter, drive a little slower, be a little careful, and we'll all be here a little longer. And what's the rush? Take it easy.
Exactly.
That's my message.
I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you're welcome.
you. And so now it's time to take a little break and hang in there. We will be right back with some more fantastic information with our guest. Thank you.
You always made sure I brushed my teeth.
You told me that smart was cool.
You always told me to dream big.
To all of those parents who took the time to make raising their children their most important job, we'd like to say,
Thank you.
Thank you.
From the bottom of my heart, thanks, Mom and Dad.
This message is brought to you by the U.S. Air Force.
If you keep tanning, indoors or out, the effects of harmful rays will show up on your skin. Wrinkles, age spots, and an increased risk of melanoma, the second most common cancer in women 15 to 29. Stop tanning. Time may not be on your side. Learn how to protect your skin at spotskincancer.org. A message from the American Academy of Dermatology.
You'd do anything to take care of that spot on your lawn. So why not take care of that spot on your skin? If you're a man over 50, you're in the group most likely to develop skin cancer, including melanoma, the cancer that kills one person every hour. Check your skin for suspicious or changing spots. Go to spotskincancer.org to find out what to look for. A message from the American Academy of Dermatology.
Oh, hey, bud. Where are you headed?
Just gonna hang out.
With Gary and Todd?
Yeah?
I've been meaning to ask you, is there any drinking going on in this crowd?
No.
If any of your buddies ever pressure you to take a drink, just tell them you promised your dad you wouldn't. I'd do anything to keep you safe.
Okay, I will.
I hope this is working.
I promise. Love you too, Dad.
They really do hear you. For tips on what to say, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Business, right? Where do you want to go?
Oh, hello, we're back. And we're chatting away, and thank you for joining us again, because there's just so much to, as Dodie says, to this universal message from Kay Wilson, who is amazing, as you already noticed. She's helping us all as we're sitting here and talking. So we want to, within the hour that we have, we want to make sure that we give Kay the opportunity to get the messages out that can help each and every one of us. And those of you who, and I always tell you, please put paper and pen right by the TV or right by where you're sitting so you can take notes. Because this is a woman you really want to listen to. And maybe you need her in your life, in your work. And you will have the contact information. You can always get that also from our website. And so we were talking about the aha moments, okay, because this is a woman who does many things and helps many people in many ways. So maybe we should start back with the aha moment when you decided to become an attorney.
Well, the truth is, I can't remember a time when I didn't want to be an attorney.
Oh, really?
As my mother tells it, I was about 5 years old when I announced, I'm going to be an attorney like Perry Mason.
Wow.
I had been watching a show, old-time show, called Perry Mason.
My sister.
And I was riveted by this man's command of the English language and his style and his perspective and his persona. I was captivated by the whole trial lawyer scenario, the courtroom drama. And so that's when, I guess that's the genesis of wanting to be a lawyer. And then, growing up, I never swayed from that. I never swayed. And it kept me out of a lot of trouble because I was so focused on getting through high school, then working my way through college, and then law school, that my measure for anything I did was, will this further me becoming a lawyer or hinder me becoming a lawyer? I can tell you that took out a lot of things in high school, and it certainly took out quite a few parties in college, because I was just really focused, and I really saw it as a noble profession, and I wanted to be a part of that. So that was my aha, I guess, was watching Perry Mason's show.
Love that show.
Perry
Love
Mason.
that show. Yeah, and I understand how you could be fascinated by the character in the show, because it was one of my favorite ones too. But now, you're not just an attorney. 13 years ago, was it, that you started adding coaching?
Yeah.
And what made you decide to do that?
Well, I was an attorney working for the federal government. I was working for the Postal Service Law Department as an attorney, and my job there was to defend the Postal Service from various claims and employment claims that would come up. And as was my practice, I would circulate among my peers in the office, and we would talk about our cases and our caseload. And I remember speaking to one peer in particular, and I was kind of coaching him on how the strategies for litigating that particular case. And at one point he said, "Boy, Kay, you're a really good coach. You're even better than my life coach." And I had never heard of such a phrase, life coach.
Wow.
So this was like 2001 or 2.
Wow.
And so I started looking into this life coaching and coaching. And I knew I didn't want to be a life coach, but I knew I wanted to be a coach in some arena, probably having to do with working with executives on workplace environment improvement and fair uses of power, which is one of my themes. So that was the moment when I clicked in that there was such an industry as consulting and coaching. And then I took the coaching classes in New York City and studied under the fellow who came up with the program I worked through is David Rock. He wrote the book Personal Best. And so getting through that coaching series and learning the coaching skills, I then brought that back to my job, and then I was like, okay, we're going to coach. So my coach hat was on all the time. I'm like, I'm a lawyer, but I'm a coach. I'm a lawyer, I'm a coach. And so I started to design training and workplace environment interventions. And I got national recognition for my training and received awards and accolades for that. And all of the training that I did was based on improving the workplace environment at the Postal Service so that there wouldn't be so many claims of harassment and discrimination. Because it was a lot. It was an avalanche of claims, and people pretty upset. And I would do things like, well, one time I got called into a plant. I can't say where it is because you'll know exactly what plant it is. But this plant had a real problem. It was a mail processing plant, and they had a really big problem between management versus labor. And then there was also interfighting between the employees themselves. And so I went up there on a peace mission. And I remember we had a big town hall meeting, an open hall, everybody was there. These people were so angry. If they had pitchforks and torches, I wouldn't have been surprised. They were so angry. So I had to learn on my feet quickly to diffuse that sense of hopelessness that is born of the anger. They're angry because they feel hopeless, and they feel upset and scared about their workplace environment. So I had to get through that, make some peace, and then be able to facilitate the dialogue with that group of people. And so I would do things like that and then make my management recommendations. But then there came a time when, at some point in my career at the Postal Service, I was flying around the country doing training. I was doing most of the stuff I was doing was not my job title. So they at some point kind of reined me in, and that's when I decided, if I'm going to be a lawyer and stay here and not be able to do the things I love, which I was starting to love the training and the coaching, then I'm going to start my own gig. And that's what I did. And that's when I went out on my own in 2006. So I've been basically freelancing since then.
And the Maverick part of it, how did that?
Yeah. So the Maverick Charm School for Mavericks.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's just so clever.
I love that term. That word.
Well, it's clever,
Maverick.
but then it's
yeah,
so
you know, a lot of people love it. A few people don't like it, but a lot of people love that phrase because it kind of is an onomatopoeia. It says what it is. It's charm school for someone who's a maverick, who's strong, who's coming on strong, who's maybe taking up all the room in a given space.
Not quite so charming.
I mean, not quite so charming. And there was a time, in you know, not so far back, when they would send executives to quote unquote charm school. And I was working with one of my friends who's also Robin Benjamin. She's also a consultant, and she and I convene regularly. And I was talking to her about my postal service work and the kind of work I was getting, and I started getting work in the area of dealing with intractable conflict in workplace environment situations. And I found that, you know, I was tending more and more to work with the most difficult person in the equation. That would be the person that I would spend the most time with because it would garner the most outcome if they could make some simple changes. So she asked me, you know, what are you doing lately? I said, well, I'm working with people that are really cranky sometimes, and they put their employees down. Sometimes they're too demanding. She goes, geez, they sound like a bunch of jerks. I said, well, not really. I said, it's more like charm school. She goes, yeah, charm school for jerks. And then I thought, you know what? They're not jerks. They're mavericks. So then we came up with Charm School for Mavericks. And the work that I'm doing there is, like I said, working with people who have those strong personalities so that they can moderate how much their power comes across. So that they use it when they need it, but know how to moderate and pull it back when they don't, when there's circumstances that require more democracy and a more democratic approach in the workplace. So that's the genesis of it.
Yeah. And then into the prisons. When did that?
Well, as soon as I took my coaching classes in 2002 in New York City, that's when I finished the classes in the spring, and then I started to come up with what I consider to be my principles and my program. And then that's when I thought, you know, where should I test this? And since I had been a criminal defense attorney in the early part of my law career, I thought, inmates, why not try to help inmates? And that's when I talked my way into prison.
I think it's wonderful.
Absolutely.
And you're doing something that I noticed on your website. You're not just working with the prisoners, you're working with their families too. And tell us a little bit about what's the York Summit?
Yeah, the York Summit was a gathering of people in the pre-release service community. And in other words, there's a lot of volunteers that go into prisons. A lot of people find their way there, whether they're religious programs or they're self-care programs or self-help programs. And so there was kind of a summit of what are the post-release resources available, and we were trying to come up with a directory to give to the women inmates so that they would have something that was tangible that would direct them where they can go for, say, free classes or support with job skills, those kinds of things. So that's what the summit was, and that was a couple of years ago. I continued to do the motivation and self-mastery programming for both the males and the female inmates, and and I have to say, working with the men is different from working with the women. Very different. Yeah.
How is it different?
Well, it starts from everything from the general public's perception of male inmates versus female inmates. So it's very hard for me to recruit volunteers to work with the male inmates because most people are afraid of them. Whereas I can get, at any moment, I have a core of 1 to 2 volunteers that are working for the women and teaching them motivation and self-mastery. So that's easier to recruit for. But then in terms of actually how the classes run, with the women, I'm trying to teach them to own their worthiness, to take their power back from the wrong thinking, the bad situations, the abusive relationships that don't work and need to be ditched. They tend to have more of a need to start to own their worthiness because they feel worthless. Whereas the men, I'm not imploring them to own their worthiness. They feel worthy. What I'm imploring them to do as a man is to walk the path of the peaceful warrior and to use their powers and strengths as a man in the service of what's honorable and dignified. And so my program with them is, and it's, the waiting list is hundreds of people long for this program.
Wow.
And a lot of the inmates, I wish I could duplicate myself, but with the men, it's not so much teaching them to take their power back, it's teaching them how to use their power, and this goes back to fair uses of power. You don't abuse people. And it's thematic in my life and the work that I do. It's very thematic. It all comes down to power dynamics. For the men, it's to use your power with fairness, to not take advantage, even if someone will let you take advantage of them, not take that advantage. And I have them write out what they stand for. We have one exercise where I tell the men, I want to know, what do you stand for? What would you stand up for if push comes to shove? And so they write an essay on that, and then I have them read different excerpts from different books, as well as the booklet that I myself wrote, which is about 50 pages long. And with the men, they aren't as forthcoming at first. They're much more, they just want to see who I am.
The macho thing
and
is
kind of
up,
check,
right?
Yeah, a little bit. They want to check me out and figure out, who is this woman and why is she coming to prison as a volunteer? Why is she coming here? But with the women, they are very giving, they are very verbal and articulate, they share their stories, they ask questions, they let me know when the material resonates and when it doesn't. And they, oftentimes I will see that I'm getting to them because you can see them start to tear up, especially when I talk about that part of themselves that has been wounded to the point where it's taken over and has disallowed them from managing their lives, that they got to take their power back, and that they can do it, and that they're worthy of happiness right here and now, regardless of what they did. They're worthy, and so you can see the difference. There's a big difference.
Yeah. Now the families, it's important for those who do have families to be a part of this program to help the inmates.
Yeah, well,
Right?
how that looks is, my booklet has my contact information on it for the motivation and self-mastery programs, and families often will get a tattered version of my booklet from the returning relative who's taken my class inside, and so they'll write to me and ask me, can you send me a new copy, and I'll send them a new copy. Sometimes I'll speak open, at open forums like community areas where I've gone to halfway houses. I do a lot of speaking at halfway houses where the men or the women get together and I give them, basically a booster shot and give them my program booklet and ask them if they want to carry on the message, if they want to learn how to teach it. Because that's my big thing, is I want to keep teaching people how to teach the program so it replicates.
So it reaches more
key.
people.
That's
Because
right.
there's only one person here.
That's
Although-
right, and I have to sleep and I need a
Yes,
vacation.
You just established that. I know we did.
Well, to that note, most people, I think, would pick one of those things as a career. You have the attorney part, you have the Maverick part, you have the inmate part. Those, to me, are like 3 full-time careers.
full-time, yeah.
And, how do you stay motivated when you get out of bed and go, oh my God, I got a full day today and stuff? How do you stay rejuvenated and re-energized? What do? You take a vacation.
For yourself.
Well, yeah.
Take a vacation.
So, I'm very lucky that I've found that I could delegate some of the more pedestrian activities that I need to keep up with. I've got some really good part-time staff that help me.
Okay.
And when I get down, I look at a book called Personal Power Through Awareness. And it's a book by Shania Roman. And it talks about how, here we are in Earth School, and we're learning our lessons.
Earth School.
And they're coming along, and we don't know what's coming, and all of us are susceptible to fear states. And so when I get demotivated or get into a blah state, I go to this book and I read through it. And one of the basic things it says is that life is such an incredible gift to us. And we have to remember that every day. And that to whom much is given, much is expected. And that no matter where you start, you have to just move the ball forward in your personal growth and your spiritual growth as a human spirit. It's what I believe. And so that's what I go to. That's the go-to book for me. And then, of course, I'm a community builder, and I have, as a result, a great community of friends that I can reach out to at any time and do so regularly. I'm like anybody else. Occasionally I get tired and I look at the news and get a little distracted, and I see the misuses of power on the news, and the bullying and name calling, and it's just very disturbing to me considering the work that I do. So I have a motto that I just basically do what I can with what I have, with what's right in front of me. And you know what? That's enough to make change.
And you
That's
are
enough,
making change.
Enough to be a change agent. Well, thank you. Yeah, I certainly hope so. I certainly want to think that, they say if you feel better, you can do better. And one of the comments that the women and the men tell me is that you made me feel better about myself.
Sure.
You made me feel like I am not defined by what got me here, that I can be a different way. And that's truly liberating. So it's very satisfying work.
And we are in troubled times right now, obviously. There's a lot of question marks in our future as Americans, as a country. And this book, please give me the name of the book again. I want to write it down.
It's called Personal Power Through Awareness. Personal Power Through Awareness.
I think that's going in your newsletter, huh?
And the author's last name is Roman, like Roman, but it's R-O-M-A-N.
Roman, okay.
Yeah.
And write that down, people, okay? Because I'm sure there's a lot of advice you could give people, because you've been giving us advice here for almost an hour. But can you kind of encapsulate what you suggest that we do? Maybe like yourself, when we get down, when we get discouraged by what is happening out there, like with the drivers, you noticed, Dodie, and can you give us just a few tips, techniques, the short version, that maybe we could keep in mind? Like, I used to look in the mirror every morning and say, you are important, you have a lot to give, and so go get them, go do it. And especially when I went through troubling times,
Right.
So,
well, I am at heart a community builder and a peacemaker. And what I think is incredibly powerful is to continue to work on ever increasing and building community. Wherever you go, to be a peacemaker. Any fool can make things more dangerous and more deceptive and more aggressive. It takes a bit of genius to make things go the other way toward peace. And so each of us is called, according to our talents, and to use our personal power. We all have power. To use our personal power to be peacemakers and to build our communities through the inclusion, acknowledgement, and respect that we give to all members of the community. And we can go from thinking it's from me to we to all of us. And you could look at the growth of a small child, a baby. There comes a time when they have selfhood, they have self-recognition. Me, I exist. And then they can talk. Mine. They go from me to mine, which is just an expansion of their me territory. It's not that hard to go from me to we, because that's your tribe. It's much harder to go from we to all of us. And that's the leap that I want to see humanity take. And I want to see it happen in companies which may have internecine problems with divisions and divisiveness and teams against each other, departments competing against each other. You go from the me and the we. The we is the team, and then the all of us is the whole company. And then ultimately, you want to take in the fact, or you want to take in as a company, your good corporate citizenship So it isn't just the company, it's everyone, that everyone has to benefit from this enterprise. And so that's the ideal and that's the model. But it all goes back to community building, making sure that you include people, making sure that you yourself reach out to others, making sure that you keep your connections strong. Because if they say that the people that have the most resilience to get through difficulties are people who are well connected. And it isn't just surfacey connection. It's the kind of connection that's deep and vulnerable.
I get it.
Absolutely.
And it takes courage to do that. So courage is at the forefront.
Yep.
And you know, another community, of course, is family.
Yes, yes it
That's
is.
a very important one.
Yes.
And the things that we talked about today, the wonderful things that you've shared with us, please keep in mind with yourself, your family, your community, everything that you're surrounded by. There's nothing wrong with being in Maverick, okay?
Oh, not at all.
Not at all. As a matter of fact, some of our leaders, most of our leaders have been Mavericks. And when I get to the quote, I'll talk a little bit about that. And I have learned so much from you today. And I'm
thank you,
just so
Marilyn.
thrilled. You didn't disappoint at all. Not at all.
We didn't think she was going to anyway.
you both.
And we've only got a couple of minutes, so I'm quickly share that other thought that you had.
I have another reminder, and it's a lot more serious. I want to remind people, and this is something that we know, but we forget because we get busy. Life is very precious. 3 people in my world passed away in the last week and a half. And it was a very, very abrupt reminder that you need to remember the people in your life that you love. Reach out to them, call them, hug them, tell them you love them. They may not be here tomorrow. Just, like I said before, slow down. Life is important and life is precious.
And give somebody a hug today, okay? Every day, each and every day.
Hug your lawyer.
And,
yes, hug your lawyer.
And be a maverick who's been through charm school.
Yeah, we need the Mavericks.
Yeah. Now, before I always finish every show with a quote. And before I do that, I'd like to thank our sponsors for making our show possible. So the quote today is, now you can Google anything, okay? So if you, I always Google quotes, and I did one on Mavericks, and found this from Ziad Abdelnour, who shared several thoughts on Mavericks, including this one. I believe a maverick thinker can take a new idea, champion it, and push it beyond the ability a normal person can do. I also believe the best Mavericks can build a team, can motivate with their vision, their passion, and can pull together others to accomplish great things, just like Kay teaches them to do. A wise Maverick knows that they need others to give full form to their views and can gather these necessary contributors around them. So keep that, in other words, that leader that we may have in all of us, sometimes hiding inside, and sometimes, you know, like Kay, it can help these Mavericks make the most of being a Maverick in a good way through her charm school and her coaching. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And Dodie,
thank you.
as
Thank you, Dodie.
always, thank you. And guess what? We'll be back again with another great show. So thanks for joining in today.